Good morning, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Warriors Workshop. In the last edition, I was building some cabinets, and I have since gone ahead and I finished building those cabinets. As a matter of fact, I built those and a couple of more. And today I want to make some doors. The last one I did was a nice, 4-foot tall unit with open bookcases on top, and we want to put some closed doors on the bottom. So I also promised that I would make some shaker doors in the last episode. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at some techniques for making shaker doors. Okay, so what is it that I mean when I'm talking about making a shaker style door? Well, doors built in the shaker style are simply doors that are made with a frame of thin material. In this case, my material is going to be 2.5 inches wide. Okay, so my material is 2.5 inches. And this frame is joined together basically with slot mortises. So each piece has got a slot cut in it, and then the rails, these are stiles, or I've seen it spelled both ways, and these are rails. So the rails have got a tenon cut in them that covers pretty much the whole thing except the portion where there's a slot. And then there's a slot inside here, the depth of the rail. And there's a slot inside the rails also. Now into this empty space is placed a thin sheet of material. So you can build a strong door without having to have a big solid block of material. So they're fairly lightweight, although they're heavier than not having a door. And they do the job nicely. And they're not that hard to cut with basic tools. Now, of course, you're not going to do this with a handsaw. You're going to need a router or a table saw. In my case, I don't have the bits to use my routers, so I'm going to use my table saw with a stacked dado set. Alright, so we're set up the table saw here. I've got a stacked dado set up in the saw with a wider face plate, or a wider plate, so I'm not going to mess up my zero tolerance or my zero clearance plate. You see, that would fit the stack. I've got my fence set up, so the center of my cut is going to be right down the center of my piece of work. You see, I've got a feather board to hold my workpiece firm against the fence down at the bottom, so I'm not going to have a problem with the workpiece falling away or getting out of line. It's going to follow the fence, and I won't necessarily have to get my fingers too close to the blade. I, of course, have a push stick, so, once again, I'm not going to run my fingers over the top of the blade. And, of course, hearing protection, and on my face, of course, I've got eye protection. So we're going to start off by making a test cut, making sure that everything's set up the way I want it to be set up. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut the long pieces. Because remember, shaker style door is pretty much just a slot mortise and with a panel in it, and we'll get back to that some more later. So here we go. And there you can see the groove is pretty much right down the center of the piece. It's got Same amount of material on both sides. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now I can go ahead and cut my long pieces. So I'm going to get that camera out of the way and get myself going here. Alright, now we've got the slots cut in our material to make our rails and stiles. Now we've got to think about what lengths we're going to need these pieces to be. Now, according to my son's measurements, and this is up in his apartment upstairs, the opening I want to cover is 21.25 by 15.75. So, 21.25 by 15.75. However, I don't want to make it the exact same size as the opening, of course. So I'm going to make sure it's got a 3/4 inch overhang on it. Which means, since I'm going to have an overhang on either side, I'm going to add 1.5 inches to both measurements. So my 21.25 becomes 22.75, and my 15.75 becomes 17.25. When I add that 1.5 inches to accommodate for the sizes. All right. So now my inside here is now going to be 17.25, and my material is 2.5 inches wide. 2.5 inches. So I'm going to subtract 5 inches from that. So 12.25 is my interior from that edge to that edge. However, I'm making a 3/4 inch slot, or I've made a 3/4 inch slot in each piece to accommodate to make the seat for the interior panel. So I'm going to add another 1.5 inches to this 12.25, which is going to give me 13.75. So the lengths for each of my pieces, I'm going to have 22.75 interior. So this piece right in here. I'm going to have 17.25 in height. And then my interior panel is going to be the same width as my rails, because it'll fit inside the slot in here nicely and fit within the boundaries of my rails nicely. So 22.75 width and 13.75 height. Now in reality, I'm probably going to knock off a 1/16 to a full 1/8 inch off of each of these measurements for the inside panel, so it has room to float a little bit to accommodate a little bit of expansion or earthquakes. We do live in Southern California, and it won't end up warping the door if anything like that happens. So now it's time to get started on making those cuts, and I'll set up the camera on the saws and we'll be right back. Alright, now I've got all my stiles and rails cut to length. Now it's time to cut the tenon on the rails. So what I got to do here, and I got to make sure I've got the right sides out. No, I don't, so I'm going to have to swap sides. So first thing I did, I squared everything up. I squared my miter gauge with my fence and with my blade. I've spaced the fence so it is about 1.9 centimeters from the outside edge of this blade here. And now basically I'm just going to nibble the material away, and I'm going to use a technique that you usually wouldn't do if you were making a cross cut, but for this it'll work out fine. And that is, I'm using my miter gauge and putting the end of my material against the fence. Now once again, you normally wouldn't do this because you could end up binding up the blade, getting a kickback, shattering the material, just spreading hate and discontent everywhere. But because I'm only nibbling material away, I'm taking very small amounts away, there's no chance of that happening. So I should be fine doing it this way. And I do the same thing when I'm making screen frames. Once again, I would never, when making a cross cut, a full depth cross cut, use the rib fence in this way. But like I said, this time I should be fine. So I want to double check all my measurements here. I already double checked the height, and the height of the blade is equal to the width of one of these side edges. So I will have a tenon exactly the width of the center cut. Now once again, I want to double verify what I've got going on out here, and I'm sitting about 1.8, 1.85, and I think that's enough. But that's why I've got a test piece to cut. So let me put on my safety gear, and we'll do that. Okay, the test cut's done on my tenon. Now I'll check the fit. See if I cut it too wide or not. And it's telling me I need to adjust my depth just a little bit. Yep, because if I leave it like that, it's going to end up cracking my material. Okay, I've gone ahead and tried it a couple more times, made some slight adjustments, and now we see I've got my tenon cut on the end, and it fits rather nicely into the mortise, and you can see that if I pull it up there, it's nice and tight, it's nicely filled, it's pretty darn square. So now I can go ahead and cut all the tenons on all my rails. So what I have here in front of me is some recycled plywood. what it is, it's 3/8 inch cabinet grade plywood that was actually part of a crate that came to us at work. Now there's, probably another 5 or 6 sheets left at work. I brought home 7 sheets, I'm down to 3. And what I've done here is I've ripped down one piece. It's going to be our door faces. So what I'll go ahead and do now is I'll cut them to length, and I'll trim them up a little bit more so they fit in our frames nicely. But what's nice here is some of it's going to have to be a little bit sanded because it was left out in the sun and in the weather a little bit, so it's a little bit rough, but it's not too bad. And since this project's going to be painted, and I'm not worried about making an heirloom that's going to get passed down for years and years and years, this stuff is going to work out great. So I was able to save some money. I got some great material, and it's not going into the landfill like it would have had it been left out back at work for another 6 months. So it's a win-win-win all the way around. So now I'll just go ahead and trim this up, and then we'll start sanding, and then we'll assemble our doors. So I'll be back. All right, here I'm back again, and we're ready to assemble one of the doors. Now, here's my face material that we were talking about earlier. You can still see some of the stenciling on it from when it was a packing container. But the other side looks nice and clean. Now, like I said before, this guy's going to get painted. So once it's primed, once the paint goes onto it, you're not going to see any of this printing. I've sanded it over. It's nice and smooth. It's going to accept the finish nicely. And the kids are going to like it. So let's go ahead and start assembling. So here are my finished rails and stiles. And to put this together, it's just a matter of, we're going to dry fit this one real quick. It's a matter of getting the rails put onto the face frame, or onto the face plate. It's always good to have a little adjustment tool next to you. Whoops, he said. That's nice, that's nice. Okay, now we'll put the stiles on. It's a matter of getting everything nice and flush. There we go, that's flush, that's flush. This could use a little tapping out. And aside from hinges and hardware and knobs and stuff, this is what's going to look like. And it's as simple as that. Now, what I'm going to do in just a minute is I'm going to pull this thing back apart, and I'm going to put glue on the tenons and on the shoulders, a little bit down in the slot just where the tenon's going to be. And I'm going to go ahead and clamp it up, and that'll be it. Of course, we've got to make sure things are square, and to make sure things are square, we'll measure corner to corner. And there I've got 79.9. And measuring across the other way, I also have 79.9. So this guy's also nice and square. Let's do a double check. I'm square there. I'm square there. All right, the doors are all glued up, and now it's time to set up for the hinges. Now, I'm using the Liberty European style overlay hinge. And this type of hinge, you need to drill a recessed hole into your door frame, and then two screw holes. In this case, the two screw holes are 5/16, although they say 8 millimeter. And the main body hole is 1 1/4. They call it 35 millimeters, but 1 1/4 is close enough. And I don't happen to have any 35 millimeter Forstner bits. Now, each one of these holes has got to be 12 millimeters deep. So what I've done on my Forstner bit is I have marked a 12 millimeter line there, so I know how far down to go. The depth control on my drill press broke the first day I got it, so instead of fixing it, I just set myself up with a depth gauge. So now I've already laid out the doors to accept this, and the layout is real easy. The instructions come with the hinges, so I'm not going to go through that on video. All I'm going to do is go ahead and drill my holes on all 4 doors and prepare to put the hinges in. So here we go. And that would figure, on my first try, I didn't even bother making sure that I had enough platform set up. So now I get to do that all again. This is one of those great projects that gives you the opportunity to buy a couple of special tools. I couldn't do without a set of Forstner bits, and for about 60 bucks, it's a great deal, and I got a wide range of sizes. So, whoops. So, excellent pickup. Let's see here. It says I'm running out of battery quickly here, so I'm just going to change out this bit. And install my 5/16 with a depth stop on it. Achoo! Excuse me. Between sneezing and my asthma and the high blood pressure meds that make me cough, I sound like I'm a wreck. Okay, now notice I'm using a brad point bit on this because it makes a nice flat hole on the bottom, just like the Forstner bit does. And I finally finished. Now, you saw me cut everything out. You saw me drill all the holes I need to drill after we glued it all together. Now, I finally sanded it and installed the hinges. Now, while I was sanding it, I rounded off all the edges just slightly, just to soften them up so you don't have a sharp wood feel on anything. I only had enough hinges for 2 doors, so I'm going to have to go to the store and pick up some more before I install them. And I'll post up pictures at the end of the video of the 2 cabinets that I did with the doors. One of them is completed. It's already painted and all that good kind of stuff. The second one, the one that these doors are for, is still raw wood. My son still has to do some touch-ups on it before it gets finished. But my part of it is all done. Which is going to free me up for the next project. Now, I've had a bunch of requests for some more screen printing stuff, and there's somebody special out there that has taken his time, about 6-7 hours of his time, to observe my screen printing stuff. So the only thing I can do is repay all that by doing a little bit more building. And got a couple things in mind, like a new press that's going to incorporate what I loved in my rotary press with everything that I love about the tabletop press. So it should be a fun build. And then there's a couple extra things in there that I've gotten requests for that we're going to take a look at also. Just that's how the videos are going to stack up at the moment. So I'm done with the doors. I'm done with the project. I still have to take pictures. But other than that, we're done for this episode. So you keep up the good fight, and I'll keep coming up with stuff to build or learn how to do so I can show you. So in the end, we're all going to have some fun. So take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.